Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Azazel. As Azazel, everybody knows that you start out really strong, but that doesn't usually translate that well into the late game. Because of your short range, you're often left in a position where it's very hard to deal with enemies which you can shoot, you can basically one-shot. And it's a problem that comes up time and time again, and it's one of those things that makes Azazel both a really enjoyable character to play, but also a really unenjoyable character to play, because you want to get in there and you want to kill enemies really fast and really efficiently. Otherwise, you're just left in a position where you're playing this weird game of cat and mouse. You're trying to find an opening, you want to get in there, deal some damage, but the problem is you usually can't focus the entirety of your brimstone because you have to move out of the way, and when you do that, of course the enemy has a chance to retaliate, and some enemies have random behavior, and that can always be a bummer. Just imagine if you had something like champion spiders, maybe spiders which move like regular spiders which have a lot of HPs, so much HP that you wouldn't be able to kill them, one-shot them in one barrage of your little brimstone that you have with Azazel. That would be so problematic because you would never know in which direction they would be moving. You would always have to stay at max range, which means that you wouldn't be able to maximize your damage output, and obviously that's not that big of a deal. Those are just minorities and minutes, you know, you can get in there and shoot them twice, but when you have to do that for every single enemy in the game, the chances of you actually getting hit and just losing your cool go way up. But maybe the most important argument here is that it's really frustrating, and for that reason I don't tend to enjoy Azazel that much unless there's a really strong run. There were also obviously some things that you can do to kind of amend this, but I think the biggest deal is just getting a lot of damage. And when you have a lot of damage, you can get in there, you can one-shot enemies, kill them outright, and you have to worry about anything else. That's why Tammy's head is so proficient on Azazel, because you don't really basically have to worry about anything. You just have to get close to the enemy, press the spacebar button, and that's it. But this particular run didn't have a lot to offer us in the terms of DPS department. We didn't get any damage upgrades, we didn't get any tier upgrades, which is probably the most tragic thing. But I think we also didn't get any speed upgrades, so we were left with basically base stats for the entirety of the game. But you can see that my loadout of items that I have on the right is just stellar. These are one of the best items in the game. Of course, Humbling Bundle, Sackboy are great, and of course Bomb Bag are great for consumable points, and we can get a large swag bonus that way. But even the rest of the items, Little Brimstone is amazing, and the bomb items just give us more offensive punch. Also, I guess I would say they're more used in the terms of consumables, but just having bombs is nice because it does give you more opportunities to find other possible items, breaking items, or just find tinted drugs and things like that. But it's a nice assortment of items, so I really can't complain too much. And even now we're gonna get a succubus, and later on we're gonna get the incubus, which means that we'll have 3 little brimstones that shoot alongside us, and that will be exciting. But if you're just stuck in a position where you really have to rely on other things to deal damage, it's not so much about the brimstone that's coming out of your mouth, but it's other items. So little brimstone or succubus or maybe even incubus, you really want to shoot multiple brimstone shots at one enemy. It becomes a much more engaging experience, so I guess that's the reason why I enjoyed this daily, even if it didn't have a lot of stats. I know I'm kind of contradicting myself because I said that it's not that enjoyable, but once you have a certain select amount of items, like the ones I just mentioned, I think it does make you, or at least forces you to play in a bit of a different way, because suddenly now you have to worry about 2 familiars, and also you want to stay in the aura of the succubus familiar just so you can increase your damage. And of course, when your damage increases, the damage of your incubus increases as well, so you're kind of doubling your damage in some sense, and that's what makes this game exciting for me. When you have a certain select assortment of items and you have to play around them in order to maximize the damage output or just maximize what you can do with those. But besides that, we are, like I said, in a really good position. I think the most important thing here to take away is that range is really important, and thankfully they introduced this, I think, in like the 2nd or the 3rd patch of Rebirth, so that's way long ago. But now whenever you get range, your little brimstone actually increases, but the problem is that you really do need a lot of range upgrades for it to be noticeable. But luckily we got Tapeworm, and Tapeworm is an item that is usually, I wouldn't call it bad, it's just not that substantial because it increases your high shot speed, and because of that, it also increases your range. So your shots are kind of flying above your head, but they also have a lot of range, so you can shoot enemies on the other side of the room. And in terms of Azazel, because Brimstone really can't have any shot height, you just get a lot of increased range, and it's very noticeable. And later on, we also got the safety pin, which also increased, I'm not sure, I think it did increase our range. Am I just imagining? I know it increases your shot speed, but I'm not sure if it increases your range. I think it did. I think it increased it by something like 10. So again, a pretty substantial upgrade. And now we have a Brimstone, which sadly doesn't go all the way across the room, but it does allow us to kill enemies with a little bit more safety. But the thing I was talking about before, that I didn't have any base stats, what's really a bummer is because I felt like I played really well. I don't think I got hit even once up until this point, but then of course boss rush came, and there were some very nasty waves, and I wouldn't call them nasty in particular, but just because we don't have a lot of range, we were forced to get close and personal, and for that reason we're kinda taking too much damage and too much time to kill enemies, and I'm trying to go fast because I'm also trying to get to harsh, so all of those things kinda factored into me taking a lot of damage. It's so debilitating in some sense, but also so very disappointing, because I know this could have been, I wouldn't call it a no damage run, but a very low damage run, and for that to be taken away from us just because we're facing a boss rush scenario where I basically can't help myself but be impatient, is a bummer, because I know it's my own fault. I can't blame the game for saying, oh, you know, this is, you put two bosses against me where I had no chances of dodging, but I did have the chance of dodging. Maybe I should have waited another 5 or 10 seconds for them to be in a more favorable position, but I decided to go against it because I felt like the time wasn't on my side. And of course, that is entirely my fault, and I should have maybe planned my routes better, or maybe I should have done some other things differently, but it's one of those things which really sucks the energy out of you, at least out of me whenever I'm playing. I'm really trying to kind of be on my best behavior, so to say, and trying to get to the emotions. And when you get hit once, I feel like that just starts a spiral that leads into you just getting hit more and more times. And I got hit something like 5 times in total in boss rush, and then of course Harsh was also pretty mean, which I expected. Of course it's Harsh, and with Azazel, even though we do have quite a lot of range, especially with Purity, and the other items I was talking about, we're still in a position where we really can't focus our shots that well on Harsh. Having unlimited range against Harsh is so important. I feel like it makes this fight so much easier, but I'm not sure, for some reason I felt like he was just berserk today. And again, this might be just my bias, confirmation bias of some sort, but I feel like he can get really tough whenever you're playing as Azazel. I think that's just a combination of us not having enough damage in this case, not having enough DPS, and the most common problem, not being able to sustain that DPS because we always have to weave through in his bullets, which means that we really can't use that time to charge up our shot and kill him, because if you have any of the other unlimited range items, of course you can stay on the other side of the room, you can still dodge, but you can also still keep damaging him, and in this scenario of course we couldn't do that. So I think his AI doesn't change. It wouldn't really make sense for it to change depending on what your DPS is, but you just get to see more of the different attacks and more of those interlocking mechanisms that make Harsh work. And when you don't have enough DPS to actually get rid of him very fast, it can be quite a tough battle. And in this particular one, I just mentioned he went berserk because he kept going underground. He kept spawning those blue guys that chase you down. He kept spawning flies, the continuum shots. They were coming from one direction in 1 second and from another in another second. He went underground, started spamming bullets while there were still the polyps on the ground that kept shooting bullets at me. And it was such a weird experience, because I feel like that is something that happens sometimes in Isaac. For some reason, I mean, not for some reason, I guess it does make sense, because enemy AI is also randomized to some degree, and which attacks the enemies do really depends on basically just a random dice roll. So it does make sense that sometimes you're going to be left in a position, especially when you don't have enough damage, that just means you're going to be fighting the enemies for a lot longer. The chance of something like that occurring is just higher for a string of attacks to come at you, which you really can't deal with, or maybe you can, but it does just seem a bit overwhelming. But with that said, I'm still pretty proud that I didn't get hit more times than I did. I think I got hit like 3 or 4 times in total against Harsh, and he was a total pain, so I would consider that a minor success or a minor victory. Again, I was a bit disappointed because I knew my score was really good, and the fact I got hit so much tanked it by something like 5,000 points. If I found a breaking item on top of that and not got hit, maybe not got hit like... Oh, I mean, okay, I'll say I could have gotten hit twice. I would have forgiven myself if I got hit twice, but any more than that, it just seems like too much. So if I did get hit only twice, I think I would be in a much better position, because then again, I would only lose like 1,000 points from damage penalty, but also I would be able to get what was I just talking about? Yeah, the breaking Shrek bonus, and that would have netted me something like 55,000 points, maybe even near the 60,000s, and that would have been a good score. But what I'm trying trying to point out is that the potential is there. I feel like I can do better, that I can get more scored. It's just those minute details that really kind of are holding me back, and that's mostly just taking too much damage. What's maybe exciting, or maybe the most surprising here, is that I explored the entirety of the Dark Room with only 2 Spirit Hearts remaining, and you could have imagined that it would be really easy to take some damage and just end up dying. Luckily at this point we did get some damage upgrades, so we're not too strapped for that, but still, I could have gotten hit easily twice, and the fact I still managed to get through the entirety of the Dark Room without getting hit makes me feel like I'm improving. And I know it's not a big improvement, it's not even an improvement at all in some cases, I would say, but it does make me feel better, because later on I did get the wafer, and that did allow me to be a little bit more comfortable against Mega Satan. I did only get hit once, so it wasn't that big of a deal, so I could have fought Mega Satan even if I didn't have that protection of the wafer, but getting Virgo obviously and the shield helped a ton, and I feel like because of that I was left in a much neater position. So with that said, it was an enjoyable run. I enjoyed it for how different it was. It did get strong at the end. This is as Zazel runs tend to do, and it was a really exciting endurance test in some sense. It did allow us to experience some of those finer details of Isaac on just getting in there, having low range, and trying to kill enemies in the most efficient way possible. Well, maybe the run didn't give us all the tools that we needed to really deal with Hush and maybe Boss Rush early on. At least it made up for it with later on, and of course finishing with over 50,000 points for a Mega Satan daily. I always say that I feel like that is a decent score, especially on a daily like this where I would expect people to get a bit of a lesser one, just because I feel like it was a bit more difficult than maybe some others that I've been comparing it to. So yeah, an exciting daily, a good score, and I'm excited to see what the next one will provide for us. So I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.